We're going to go ahead and get started. Just to remind everyone, this meeting is going to be recorded, and so it will be available on our webpage, which we just recently revamped. So we'll go through that real quick. And so, but we're going to go ahead and jump right in. If you can, be sure to be on mute and monitor that for yourself. We'll also monitor a bit on our end too. And then just to remind you all, this is about the non-congregate shelter NOFA release. I don't know how many of you went ahead and downloaded that a little bit ago. It's on our website. We'll go ahead and show you guys where it is on the website too, and walk through that with you. And then we're also going to go through the whole file. So we have a lot to talk about today. Hopefully we can make it within the 58 minutes we have together now. And so just to get going, I'm going to go ahead and start with introductions. My name's Ilona Nagy, and I am one of the two fabulous HOME-ARP specialists for our little group. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jody.
Hey, my name is Jody Key, and I'm the other of the dynamic duo of the financial, the HOME-ARP specialists.
We are not wearing tights, though. We're not wearing tights. No, just comfy leggings. So, Kelly, you're up.
I'm Kelly Evans. I'm the HOME-ARP manager. I'm not near as dynamic as those two, but I'm very privileged to be able to work with them.
Yep, we're a fun group, so you guys are going to find that out over the next 2 months. It's going to be great. So this is definitely a fun group of people to be with. So we hope that the next 2 months will be something that is maybe not necessarily enjoyable, but a lot less stressful than probably what many of you are used to. What we're trying to do is kind of minimize the complications and the confusion with regard to this particular application, and then at the same time, hopefully helping y'all create a storehouse of information to have when applying for other grants. So we do hope that you're able to duplicate this process many times, or at least have a really good kind of structure to jump from to keep all of your information together. So at that, Kelly and I are mainly going to be tag teaming this. So I have like all the information up here. So this is going to be and Jody's going to jump in when she has extra stuff too. So we're just going to jump right in. So just as a quick reminder, y'all, we have the $87 million for the state of Georgia, 8.7 for non-congregate shelter, and 64 million for rental housing, which we will have lots of conversations about at the end of the year for the 2024 applications. For the non-congregate shelter piece, this really is applying to the point at the far left, or I guess at my far left. I don't know how it's turning out for you guys there, but where it talks about the Emergency Solutions Grant and emergency shelters and homelessness. Obviously, a non-congregate shelter is to help people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. And this is also a huge part about HOME-ARP, is that it is community driven. At least that's a big focus for us here in Georgia, is we want you guys to, we really appreciate all the work that everyone does. And we want to see what you're seeing. And so we want to know the information that you're getting and who's coming to your doors and why and what's going on in your communities. And so showing the data, the populations, the community partners you have, that's a really big part of our particular process and this application. So please be aware, we're not thinking individually, we're thinking group and community oriented, mindset. So we have a whole plethora of trainings coming up. We're missing next week for the celebrations for July 4th, because many of you will probably be out and enjoying your time with your families. And so we have a schedule. This is also on our website, so please look that up. And the registration links for all of these are going to be on the website. So please be sure to register to the webinars. we appreciate everyone that signed in and said, yes, I'll be there. But that is not a registration link, I'm afraid. So we want to make sure that you guys get registered for all the webinars. So please do that on the website. We're also going to send out those constant contacts, and you can sign up for that listserv there too. And so this is kind of where we wanted to sit for a quick second. So how to prepare for the trainings. So we're going to have 4 before the first submission, which is going to be in the middle of August on the 15th, like this states here, first submission. So we're going to have 2 submissions for your applications, okay? So we're going to submit the first half August 15th and the second half on September 15th, okay? And so to prepare for the trainings, at minimum, please review each of the Excel spreadsheets and the workbooks that we have with their corresponding training. That's going to help you kind of prepare and get into the mindset of what we're going to be discussing. You can go ahead and complete any of the application sections that you're feeling really confident at. It's not in stone, so you can definitely change it up. So if you want to come in with having it all filled out and change it up while we're talking, that's fine too. It's completely up to you. This process is something that we want to encourage you to kind of work with. This is a hands-on type situation. Putting together a list of questions. You're going through everything and you're like, well, I'm not so sure about this, how I should answer it. Maybe we can't be so specific per agency, but we can do some general answer. We will do general answers to questions. And so this isn't a one-on-one session that we can do. So we have to kind of, there's a line sort of there, but we will traverse that with you as well. And this is recorded. So this information is all up for public consumption. So please be aware of that going into your questions. Start your procurement process if you haven't already. So that's a really big piece. Kelly did a phenomenal training a few weeks ago, and so go ahead and look that up. It's posted on the website. It's on our YouTube page. You can get links there. It's under presentations at the bottom, so you'll see a button that says presentations, and we have all the presentations there with links to the YouTube page. If you have relocation, and that includes businesses, okay?
Before we go to relocation.
Yeah, please.
Let's do. On the procurement process, we had a question come in about using your standard grant writer. If you have a grant writer that you have, chosen previously and you're contracted with over an extensive period of time that you want to be your grant writer, there's nothing that stops you from doing that. However, those are not reimbursable costs. So if you want to have the grant reimburse you for the grant writer, then you are going to need to go to procurement. If your agency has the funds that are not federal funds to be able to pay your grant writer, you can choose whatever grant writer you want to. And I just wanted to make that really, really clear. If you have any other questions, submit them to the HOME-ARP email address and we'll get clarification and get it on our question and answer. We've got a frequently asked questions link to the page on the website.
Yeah, we would actually prefer if you would use the form versus sending us emails, just because, so that way it makes it a little bit more official and we get the information that we need from the form too. So your name and email address and things like that. So, well, I guess we could get that from the email too, I suppose. So, okay, cool. Yes. So if you have any questions, that was also a question that we posted to our FAQ on our application website. So that's been posted today as well. So going to the relocation piece, if you have tenants there that need to be relocated, go through the URA the HUD way, but also if you have businesses, that includes HUD considers that businesses, nonprofits, and farms. So if you are relocating a farm, take a look at the URA the HUD way courses on HUD Exchange. We can go ahead and connect you to that. I have this information that I posted this on the last constant contact. So go ahead and look that up and you can go ahead and get a direct link or just at HUD Exchange type URA the HUD way and that'll get you there too. No other additional. Okay, so review the federal compliance labor guidance. Remember, if you're building more than 11, so 12 and more units, Davis-Bacon does apply. It will increase the cost of building the buildings, but for all buildings involved, Section 3 is involved. Oh, thanks so much, Judy. Awesome. So Section 3 is involved, and so is possibly MeBe-Weebie. So there are some regular monthly reports that need to be sent in regarding those when you're building with DCA with home funds, and that includes HOME-ARP. So please kind of take a look at that, the full page. I know it's on under the QAP building piece, but these apply for all of the buildings that are built under our housing division. Okay, so please look at that. And then the last piece is making sure that your policies and procedures are in place. We are going to be taking a look at that. We'll be specifying policies and procedures that you definitely need to submit, but just making sure that the whole scale of them you guys are starting to work on and kind of get clear on. Okay. If the non-congregate shelter is new, you're going to have to start adding those to your current policies and procedures that you have in place at your agency. Is there anything you want to add to that, Kelly, Jody, about that? Okay, so just start taking a look at that. It's good to get started now versus, you know, September 14th. So, yeah. And so the next thing, so this is about data. It's about your SWOT analysis today. And so we really want to make sure that you understand the different, fully grasping the importance, because we know you understand the difference between quantitative data and qualitative data. But I think so often we get focused on the quantitative piece that the qualitative piece sometimes gets lost in the mix. And so I know you wanted to talk a little bit about this too, Kelly, so I'm going to turn it on over to you.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important that everyone understand that this aspect of grant writing is becoming more and more required on state and federal grants. We're seeing the state and federal legislatures really start pushing for data metrics, but at the same time, they want to understand the impact of the funds that are being passed through. And so as you're thinking about this, my rule of thumb is that I try never to put up any data without also giving a real world example. And so if I'm talking about, families that are in transitional homelessness and they're living in a hotel motel, and I'm giving the numbers of families that are living in hotel motels under McKinney-Vento, then at the same time, I'm going to give an example about the impact that that's having on the local community, on the school system, on those children and their ability to think and focus when they're at school, and the impact that that has on the school system as a whole. So you want to give the data, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're explaining how that specifically applies to your community and what you're seeing boots on the ground. Because I can pull data all day long. I cannot mimic the stories that you know. Pull the personally identifiable information out of it. Talk about it in generalized terms, but make sure you're telling these stories that's tied to this data.
Yeah. And I think that is a good segue into our different kinds of data. And so we definitely, I think most of the time we kind of try and sit in the middle, being data driven. And so it's important to have data inform what you're doing. Data centric is everything depends upon the data that you're doing, and we eventually want to get there. And I think right now most of us kind of sit in this data driven piece because it's actively used to make decisions. And so like it says here, when it's properly used, it leads to sound and well-informed decisions. And so we definitely want buildings to be built and activities, for example, if you're doing a lot of, youth activities in a county or a city that primarily has a senior population because it's a retirement community, that particular youth program probably will not be as well attended as in other parts of the state where there's more kids. And so,
Right.
and that's a very basic example, but it's a very real example of, we want to make sure that, you know, and especially with all the time that you're putting in and the money that's being put in and everything happening, we want to make sure that the shelters that are being built will be inhabited well for a long period of time. And so the data helps support that. So
Yeah, let me give you an example real quick. So, for example, if you're getting ready to expand your shelter, we need to know why. So you're maxing out your numbers. I want to know what those numbers are. You're turning people away. Okay, tell me about the number of people that you're turning away. And going to data centric is then looking at the numbers that you're turning away and saying, based on these numbers, we know we need X number of additional units for shelter every single night. And so that's data centric. You're not just looking at the fact that you're turning 24 people away every day. You are actually looking at that and then drawing conclusions and deciding on what your next step needs to be. That is everything that this grant application is. So you take that data of who you're serving, how you're serving them, the numbers that are your gap, and then you say to us, this is who we're turning away on a regular basis because we don't have enough beds. That is 100% data-centric explanations of why you need the HOME-ARP grant.
well, and part of that too is with a non-congregate shelter and what you're wanting to build, and the even down to the development piece. If you're serving more families, obviously a 150 square foot, unit is not going to take care of all the families that you have coming to your door. And so if we're building a single unit, then we want to make sure that you're considering maybe there's doors between all the single units so you can open and shut them and lock them depending on how big the family is. And so maybe in that kind of hotel motel type setup that you may have for your non-congregate shelter, you have that door that can be, locked if there's a single person, or unlocked if there's a family of 4. And so it's those types of things that are important, that's supported by the data that you provide us, that lets us know, okay, this totally makes sense. And, because some of those things may cost more. So you need to justify why you're moving in that direction. So y'all are smart people. I think we're repeating a lot of stuff that you already know. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next thing. So Jody and I had recently gone through a training that talked about writing data stories. And I wanted to just kind of briefly go through this. You guys can read it specifically, but I thought it was really good to mention with all this conversation that we're having around data. And so using the right data is super important. Please do not be giving us data from the 90s. That is no longer relevant. Is the data too old? Is your interpretation open to question? Is there something in it that could make us wonder, maybe it's from an agency that you got it from? So, we all know that census data is pretty, for the most part, on point. So is this coming from an obscure data source that we're not familiar with? And does it complete the story for what you're telling us? Using different data sets and synthesizing it into something that makes a lot more sense. So the example that was given is, if the story that's being told is about something that has changed over a period of time, looking at the historical data and then contrasting it with current data may be something to consider. Okay, so maybe actually that information from the 90s may be really great, as long as you have something from the from 2020 that you can, market and show, it was this low. We had, 5 people who were homeless in 1990, and now we're at 2,500. And, that's because X, Y, and Z happened in between. And so we have seen a huge increase in the amount of homelessness in our area. And so, yes, we need the shelter, that kind of thing. And then making personal and real. So that would be the qualitative data that Kelly was talking about earlier. Like, what is it about the information that's super important? How is it relevant to the people in your community? And how is it relevant to Georgia? Okay. So, and then the last piece is over questioning the data. So really kind of go through it with a critical eye, just to make sure that we're seeing what you're seeing. Okay, so that may even be having someone who is a part of your agency or even a different agency read through what you've got to make sure that it makes sense and that it's relevant. Anything else you can think of?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I think this is a great tool. So as you're going through and you're writing your narrative being your explanation, anything that's a text-based answer in the application. Once you get your narratives done, go back and pull up this specific slide and compare your narrative to these questions and kind of make sure that you're looking at your narrative through this lens. So you want to write it all out. You want to make sure that you've got your data throughout the narrative that you're writing, but then go back and just take a look at it this way. Evan, I saw your post. I love this slide too.
Yeah,
This was all Alona and Jody from the training that they had. I think this is wonderful. And for people who write narratives, the narrative wins you the grant. The data is required now, but that narrative and how you tell that story is what is going to tip a grant in your favor and make people want to award you the money. Yeah. And so going through and looking at how Jonathan set this up and really looking at it through this lens, I think is going to give you a real competitive edge.
Yep, I agree. So we're at 20 minutes after, so we got to get moving. Okay, and there was a great quote: the ability to take data, to be able to understand it, process it, extract value from it, to visualize it, to communicate it. That's going to be a hugely important skill in the next decades. So this was from the Google's chief economist. It was a part of the webinar too, and I just thought that that was just such a great quote because it really is reflective of the importance of what we're talking about today. So here's a repeat of the locations that we have that we mentioned before at our last data webinar. So I'm not going to go into this too much. Also, again, to tell your story, looking at your own personal agency data. So for those of you who are in HMIS, extracting that from Client Track, for if you have your own websites and things like that, looking at that, then looking at the census data and synthesizing it that way, looking at the point in time count and synthesizing it that way, showing different types of data and how it works together with what you're seeing, because that data from your intakes and your assessments that you're doing, that is entirely relevant to what you're pulling up from all of these other data sites, because that's your experience, that's what you're seeing. So be sure to take your agency database and make sure all the information is up to date, make sure it's clear. Again, you guys have several weeks to get this going. Start going through all that data to make sure that it is as accurate as possible. Excuse me, looking at what we have at DCA, several of you are with DBHDD, all these different areas too have a lot of data sets that you can utilize. And then University of Georgia and Georgia Tech are great places for data as well. So look at those sources too. And Kelly, I know we're going to move into, so why don't we move into the review of the counties that we have and your data, and then we'll go into the application.
Yeah, okay, let's jump right in. So when looking at making the case, I went out and pulled data for, I don't know, I think it was 13, 18.
Stop sharing.
It would help if I shared my screen, wouldn't it? I got so excited that I didn't even share it. Okay. I went out and looked at 13 counties that submitted a request to have me give examples for them. And so the first thing I did was I pulled the population for the county. All right. And that's the link to the website. And we're going to put this spreadsheet up on our website, as well as one that helps with all of the counties. But this one was just for an example. So I pulled the population, and then I wanted to look at housing. So the best website at the census for housing information is going to be the DP04. And so there's the link, and it takes us out to DP04. And I have cut on geography. And so you click on the geography, you click on county, you
Hey,
go down
Kelly.
to Georgia. Yeah.
Because it's in gray, it's a little bit difficult to see. Is it possible to make that just a wee bit bigger? That's better. Yeah.
Let's see if it's going to let me figure out how to.
Or maybe even 125. Because it's at 150 now. Oh yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So cut on
Thank you.
geo, and then you can go in to Georgia, and you can tell it you want all counties, or you can do like I did and just cut on the counties that you want to see. And then that's going to give you the estimate by county. It's also, when you first do that, it's going to cut on the margin of error. I just cut it off. I click it and cut it off. So what you want is you want this estimate number. And yes, there's a margin of error to it, but it's fairly consistent across the board. So we're comparing county to county. I don't worry about that. But this is going to give me the data that I need to be able to build a profile for the county. So from that, you can tell it's the same link through here. I pulled total number of housing units. I wanted to know how many of them were occupied and how many are vacant. If you're seeing a lot of vacant units, then you have a code enforcement problem in your county. And you need to start taking a look into that. You're most likely going to have a disproportionately high number of units that are substandard or dilapidated. Okay. And so the next thing I wanted to do is I wanted to look at the owner occupied housing. And so I said, okay, I want to know number of units without a mortgage, number of units with a mortgage, and then I added those two together to get my total owner occupied units. And then from that census table, I took owner occupied vacancy rates. Okay, so if you have a low vacancy rate, you do not have a lot of housing stock available for people to buy. That means that the cost of housing is going up in your community because supply and demand. If there's a high demand and there's not enough supply, the cost of housing is going to go up. Okay, so anything less than 3% would concern me. Okay, so then I looked at rental units. So in Catoosa County, we have 5,800 occupied rental units. The vacancy rate for rental units is 4%. Anything more than 5% tells me that you need to go back and look at the total vacant housing units and see what percentage of that you have to see if dilapidation is a factor in this number. Okay, if dilapidation is low and you're not looking at a substandard issue and you have a lot of units, so like Chattooga County has a 7% occupancy rate. So 7% of all units in the county are vacant at any given time during the year. Then the next step is okay, you're going to need to look at what are the percentage of income that people are paying towards rent. And that's where these two come into play. Okay, so gross rent as a percentage of household income, 30 to 34.9%. So they're paying between 30 and 35% of their income for their rent. Okay, so for Catoosa, you got 330 households that are paying over 30%. Anything more than 30% is considered rent burdened. Okay. And then the next one is they're paying 35% or more. Now, the national standard for very rent burden is 50%, and you're not going to find that on this table. But what this table does tell you very quickly is if you add up 30 to 34.9 and then 35 plus, you have 2,144 units or households that are rent burdened in Catoosa County. Okay. What is that as a percentage of all rental units? It's 9%. What is that as a percentage of all occupied? What is that as a percentage of occupied rental units? 37%. What is that as a total of occupied housing units, including owner occupied? It's 9%. And so anything here in this bottom row that is 15% or more is concerning and needs to be looked at. If it's lower than 15%, the next thing you do is you look up here and you say, okay, but as a percentage of rental units, how is it? And when you start seeing that 1 out of every 3 rental units is rent burdened, you had a rental affordability problem. So why does that matter? Okay, so let's think of it in terms of the application. You now have a picture of what the cost of housing looks like in your community. You know that people who are renting in your community, that 1 out of every 3 households in your community is rent burdened. Well, what does that mean? Well, they're paying 30% or more. So if they have any fluctuation in income, they've got no buffer. If they don't have reserves, if they don't have a savings account, if they don't have money stuck in the mattress somewhere, and they get sick and they don't get paid for a week of work, they won't make rent. And that's what you have to take a look at. And so when you're looking at the potential for homelessness, especially the McKinney-Vento definition, where people are evicted and they start couch surfing, or they start living in places temporarily like hotels and motels and shelters, you want to be looking at what are the things that are driving that. And being rent burdened is the number one thing that is driving that, because they have no margin for any kind of issues that come up. They're already paying too much of their income towards rent. So anything that fluctuates, they have a bill that comes in for medical care. Their kid is diagnosed with asthma, and now they have to be able to pay for asthma medication. Their car breaks down. Anything that eats away at that disposable income is putting their rent payment in jeopardy. It means that they are more likely to then be put in a position where they're evicted. And so you want to show these numbers and explain that they are high and why they're high. And then you want to tell the story about what that impact means for the people in your community. So if 1 in 3 families are considered rent burden, or 2,100 families in Catoosa County are considered rent burden, and you know that you only have sheltering beds of, let's say you have 100 sheltering beds, then you are 2,000, potentially you have 2,000 people at any given time who are borderline for eviction. And so, no, you're not going to build 2,000 shelter units, but you can start to make a case that you need more based on what you're seeing in the people that you have coming in and the fact that you're turning people away. And this kind of data is what helps you build on a foundation that is solid. It's not your opinion. It's based in fact. The United States Census Bureau data is considered factual data. We can argue semantics on whether or not it's accuracy, but it is a standardized unit of measure that we all agree on works. And so you're building your case on those facts, and then you're filling it in with your narrative. So this is just an example of that. There's going to be, you want pit and hit count data from the point in time count. There's McKinney-Vento data. There's lots of data out there, but starting at census data and knowing which households in your communities are burdened is foundationally the best place to start for building a case on why your community needs this funding. Do you want to take questions on this, or do you want to wait, Alana? You're muted.
We can take questions. Can I go ahead and show some of the community commons information too?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's see.
And let me go ahead and say, we'll get the spreadsheet up in the next couple of days for y'all, so that for the counties or people who were who asked me to cover them, this will be available for you. And then we'll put the other spreadsheet up as well that has all the counties, and you can just look at it comparatively.
That's perfect. I love it. I also am a huge, this is from my community action days. And community commons is really big in the community action arena. This has changed within the last few years, and so you may need to have either you or someone who loves to get into this stuff kind of do a dive. And I'll go through this in the next 3 minutes, so then that way we can get to the other stuff and have time for questions too. So this is not going to be a thorough or comprehensive review, but here's some points that you may want to note. Okay, one is you can sign up for free. That way you can establish your own account. Here is an area for maps and data. They have a ton. Basically, this is kind of like a warehouse of where to get all kinds of data from all kinds of places. I'm going to highlight a few. One is this Spark map. Actually, the vulnerable footprints is definitely a good thing, but I'm going to do the general Spark map that they have. And so we're going to take a look at the tool real quick. I did do Catoosa County, and what it does is it aggregates all the information from the census for your county too. So it's similar to what Kelly just did. It's just going to look a little different. So if we do Georgia, and I was just doing Catoosa because it came up for what we had. And then you can look at all of these different areas. From demographics, income economics, there's a lot of different options that you can go ahead and delineate that you want to take a look at. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead. I did a section for just the demographics here because it's quick. And just to let you know, there's a lot of information that comes through this. So you may want to do it in sections just in case. Yes, sparkmap.org, or you could go on to the Community Commons website, Evan, and that's a great place. And this will all be, I'll put links. Actually, Jody, if you could put a link for Community Commons, it's just communitycommons.org in the information, that would be great. So, and then this is what comes up for Catoosa County just for the demographics. And it goes over the area. It also compares it with Georgia and the United States. And so total population by age groups, total population by race alone, percentages. And so you can go through, and again, it has a lot of different sections for that particular type of census data. Then they also had one under housing. So if you look here to the side, there's a housing section. And this is a housing needs assessment that you can also take a look at. And when you open it up, you can go ahead and look at the different assessments that you can go ahead and download and use. Okay, so this is just a quick example. Again, communitycommons.org. And again, go to maps and data, has a ton of options for you. If you go under housing, it's a ton of additional options. And here you can also sort by tools. You can take a look at the different tools that pop up, which all includes websites and that aggregates all different kinds of data. Okay, so this is a great place to start looking. Okay, and also note at the bottom of most of these that go ahead and take all the data, at the bottom you can see where they get it from. And just make sure that those are highlighted and that you're looking into that too, to make sure it's accurate, okay? So that is that. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
that
go
was the
into
other
too
thing I
much.
was gonna make sure we point out is that when you put data into the application, there are places for you to tell us where you're getting your data from. Copy and
Yes.
paste the link over, or,
Yes.
you know, copy and paste the header over so that we know where it's coming from. Because as a data nerd, I am gonna go out there and look and just
She
see
will
what you came
look.
up with and where it came from. And so make sure you got a good reference for me so I
Yeah.
can go take a look at it.
So, so let's go ahead and let's jump into the application. Let's do this for about 10 minutes. So about 1:50, we're going to go ahead and stop for questions. Also, if you guys have questions while we're going through this, definitely let us know. So when you go on our website, let me go ahead and website, there you are. Here it is. Many of you probably already know this. Click here for the application page. It's just right there at the top. And then here is the packet. You can go ahead and click it there. And then you can go ahead and download it right here. Okay. Next, this will come up. You're going to see 9 different folders. Just a note, this first one has the manual in it. It has the overall scoring sheet. So all the different scoring sheets you see, it's all in one place. And then, and so that's, oh, that's a shortcut. Okay, great. And then relevant manuals. Down here at the bottom, this has the implementation notice for HOME-ARP. So note that it's in folder 9. The written standards for policies and procedures, the preference prioritization policy, and then the HOME-ARP policy brief. So those are all just recent updates that have been for the grant itself. So you guys have that. Okay. So let's go to the main packet. Every folder you're going to see has an actual file. That's for you to upload your documents into. So when you send us those first 4 sections of data, the operations budget, your development budget, and your development overview, you're going to send us those 4 files. Okay, so it's going to be the workbooks that you have that are in Excel, and then the additional documents that are in the file. You're going to zip them up and send them to us. Okay, and that way we're going to have a way for us to put it into our database, and then we're just going to have each of you have your own file, and we're going to look through them that way. Okay, so we tried to create some order with this to help you, so that way you can just zip it and send it. Okay, and we'll go through that in 4 weeks before you guys do your applications. So this will be re-reviewed. So we're gonna focus on Data&SWOT today. So let's pull it up. And again, just go ahead and raise your hand if you're like, whoa, 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 stop, repeat that. We're gonna. So this is right here. We have this all in the PowerPoint as well. So we have a data checklist for every section, okay, for you guys to go through. For this particular section, there's a project overview. There's the data-informed design, and this is the area that Kelly was talking about with the website. I'm going to go into this a little bit more with the actual document. I'm just going through it real quick. And then also the bottom part for the narrative and the qualitative data she was talking about, okay? And then this is an example of a data-informed map. Probably not the best example, but it's an example nonetheless. And then we're going to talk about SWOT. Okay, and then we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring this up real quick. Please be sure to include in this packet when you send it your information that confirms that everything's all good with the IRS. And then proof showing that all qualifying populations are eligible for HOME-ARP activity or a project on your data-informed design form. So this is basically a download of the information. So like we looked at that census data on Community Commons, downloading that, either putting that as a PDF into the form. If you can't put it into a PDF, which you probably can, so please don't send us lots of paper, but mainly we want it in a, actually don't send us paper at all. This is all by internet. So, so try and get it into a PDF. If that means scanning it, that's fine too. I feel like I'm going down a rabbit hole right now. So partnership or operating agreement, if that applies to you. And then any GIC document. So if you are working with any of other in your community for a GIC kind of action, Kelly, I think you can go into this a little bit more around GIC. But
yeah, if they're a GIC team. So if you are a Georgia Initiative for Community Housing community or have been and you're an alumni, whether you've done your alumni certification or not, take your work plan, your last work plan, and put it in there as a PDF so that we can take a look at it. It's going to back up that you have a community-driven solution.
And every checklist at the top, by the way, has this, here, let me go back, has state organization, and that's more like not us as a state, but for you to state as far as an action, your organization. So I'm going to put HOME-ARP as an example. And because, you know, this is a super swanky, it's actually not, it's probably pretty basic, but I did that on purpose. It actually will show up on all your other websites. So that way we know who you are. Okay. So it'll show up on all of them at the top. See HOME-ARP. Okay. So please do that for every checklist that you have. I hope you're all writing this down. I can't see you all writing it down feverishly, but please write that down. This is a very basic overview about your agency and who you're working with. The type that you are, information about the project and where you want to have it located, everything about your organization, super basic stuff, including your grant administrator and your developer. I hope you guys have those. If you don't, that's fine. I just want you guys to remember you need to start building in 12 months if you get awarded. So that's kind of some important information to have just to make sure it gets started in 12 months. What I tried to do for everything that had a drop down was to put select there so you were aware of it. If you have a shelter location in mind, this really helps us know if it's new construction or if it's some sort of rehabilitation, or if it's, hey, there's a building and it's going to be demoed. All of that can be paid for with HOME-ARP funds. Acquiring the land, the new construction, the demo, or the rehab, that can all be done with HOME-ARP money. So it just helps us understand what's going to be happening where you're building. Okay, so that's what all those questions are trying to do. And then how many units you would like to build. Lastly, before I turn it over to questions and Kelly and everyone else, I'm just going to run through this, who you want to target. And so you can go ahead and just put yes and no here, or not applicable, who you're serving. There is, for us, there is no specific populations or preferences. We've stated that in our allocation plan. So that, just to let you all know. But I know some of you are domestic violence agencies. And so we want to make sure that, you know, you're very specific with that too, letting us know who you're serving, because that's a very specific type of build, stating that. Your shelter history, how long have you been around? Basic information and data. Okay. And then your additional organization developer comments. Okay. Any additional pieces? So now we're going to move into the, okay, I'm going to stop here real quick.
And let me just say, when you see a place that says additional comments, don't be afraid to duplicate something that you already have on another page. So if you have like a really, really focused reason why you're doing this, and you have space to tell us in different ways and on different sheets what that is, it's okay for you to say it over and over and over again.
Yes.
So that we understand that this is what you're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
Don't leave any spaces blank. If you have a chance to
Yeah.
put in your narrative, tell us and tell us over and over and over again.
And you can upload documentation into those files as well that state that too, what Kelly just said. So that's either way is fine. Do we have any questions before I move on? Okay. Wait, something came up in the chat.
Yeah, I answered it while he was
You
asking.
answered.
Evan asked
Okay.
it as I was saying it.
Okay, great. Data-informed design. So this does have a drop down for the populations that you just went over. The data input would be the website for the why, and then your analysis. So this basically would be individuals who are families, for example. And let's put in the communitycommons.org. Or actually, you could even do the census data. And then you say showing more families coming into the community or coming into the shelter because maybe there was a I know that there are different kinds of what's the word I'm saying, like economic development wise, maybe there's something that shut down in your community and so more families are coming into your shelter because X, Y, and Z shut down. So if you can show the shift that's happening in housing, if you can then compare it with, you know, your own personal data. So you can say HMIS data and then show that and then put those PDFs all into put it all into your folder. So then that way we can see what that data is. If you have other populations that you're serving, you can go ahead and put those there. And then this is where you can go ahead and add your narrative, what Kelly was talking about in this section. Now, I specifically kind of locked nothing. If you notice, you can manipulate this. Now, please note that I'm very familiar with how this whole format is set up, so please don't delete anything. But if you need to expand something, you absolutely can. And if you need to somewhat alter things here and there and manipulate it to what you need to do, please feel free, obviously within reason. All the information we're asking for needs to still be there. So you do need to answer those questions. You can't just delete them willy-nilly. But you can expand the rows and the columns and things like that for what you need. We will probably not be printing any of this out and just viewing it electronically. So so that gives us a little bit of workaround. Go ahead.
Evan is asking, are there any expectations around word counts for narrative sections?
We've actually kept it quite open. That's a great question, Evan. And so we want you guys to be able to tell your story. Obviously, if we're spending like 50 hours on your application, there's going to be a bit of concern there. And, you know, you obviously, for your benefit and ours, you don't want our eyes glassing over because we can't just handle it anymore. But we have left it open for you guys to determine, you know, to really tell your story. We've not put a lot of specific, I guess, the infrastructure we've left pretty open around it.
Yeah. So the spreadsheet is going to limit where it's going to limit. And there are some places that Excel gets a little ticky about it. Drop down to the next row and keep writing if that happens. But in terms of the quality of what you're trying to tell us, more is more. So if you need to tell me more about what it is you're trying to get across, then go ahead, tell us more. Now,
Yeah.
the three of us are not going to be reading these and scoring them other than threshold. So when you're talking about it, I want you to remember that we're going to be bringing in other people from DCA to read these and to score them. So you want to make sure that you don't lose them in the verbiage, and at the same time that you get your point across.
Right.
And sometimes that's very straightforward, and that's
Right.
okay. And sometimes you have to write a paragraph to be able to explain it, and that's okay too. I will tell you straight up, after 30 years in community development, you will not out-talk me or outright me. So if you put in a narrative that is not based in fact, that you're just trying to snowball me into kind of believing what you're telling me, I understand the concepts of fact and fiction, and it won't pass threshold if you do it that way. If you base it in good data with a strong narrative that's based in experience in your community, and you tell me the story of what's going on in your community, and it's got value, you take up as much space as you think you need to.
Right. Well, and we didn't want it to limit, because oftentimes with those limitations, which are totally understandable for us, however, we didn't want to have you miss things and leave stuff out just for the sake of the length of an answer.
Right.
And so we want to hear it all. We want to hear the why. That's the biggest part. And so again, this is not your normal application. This whole, all these steps are not your normal application. And, you know, again, have other people read it. I highly recommend taking, this whole thing is for your benefit in so many ways. If you go through these each week and have other people read them as you go along, that way you're not rushed as of August 15th. And so,
Absolutely.
And you're getting different eyes on it, you're getting different perceptions, and making sure that the people who are reading it really understand it. Because that's the other thing, is you want to be able to communicate your story well and well understood. Okay, we are almost at 2 o'clock, so let me walk through this real quick. SWOT analysis, and raise hands if there's questions that need to be answered. So the SWOT analysis, this is not going to be scored. Okay, this is a tool though. This is a way for you to look at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. Now, if you choose to include this completed, that is great. Okay, again, it's not going to be scored, but again, this could be part of telling your data story. So an
I will
example,
read it.
Yeah, all of us will. And so with regards to some of these pieces, maybe a weakness, and this actually came up in one of the conversations we had. If you have a weakness or a threat, which actually tells part of your story, it may be really good for us to know that we have these particular, you know, maybe one of the questions here, number 3 under threats, are, do any of your agency's strengths hold you back? And it may be that you guys are like the landing agency for the whole community. Okay, that is a strength, but it can also be a threat because you are burgeoning. You are just exploding with people that you need to help. And so, yes, you need another building in order to be able to kind of help, you know, move people into an additional location. Will the SWOT, we just got another question. Will the SWOT analysis be shared with other reviewers or only for your eyes for threshold review?
No, I think it'll be shared. I mean, remember, everything they're putting out is open to a open records request, first of all. Okay, and second of all, I think it informs the rest of it. This, though it's not scored, is a great place for you to make your case. If you send me an application that has all of your strengths and weaknesses, and you've listed them out, and you've really bragged about how wonderful your organization is, and under weaknesses and threats, you've kind of just filled it in to fill it in, you don't need a grant. Okay? I mean, if you're doing a great job and everything's hunky-dory and life is wonderful, and you don't have a lot of threats or weaknesses to what you're trying to do, your mission, then you don't need a grant. So it's important for you to really tell us what it is that is keeping you from being successful, because that tells us why you need the grant.
Right.
You know, and if it's because you have a city council person that is giving you a hard time, that's not about the grant. Okay. Yes, that may be a factor, and it may really be a threat to your agency that you're having to deal with that, but that doesn't inform the grant. What informs the grant is that you got more people coming in than you can handle. You got more need than you got funding. You've got, you know, a plant that closed in your community, and it is killing you trying to provide services. You can't, you know, you've got a teen pregnancy problem, and you can't provide enough parental training and support for them. Those are all things that inform the grant for us.
Yeah.
So use it. Hint, hint. Use it.
Yes. And in addition to that, with the using this, is we want you guys to go in. Sometimes you don't get the opportunity to stop and do this for your agencies. This gives you the opportunity to do so. Okay. So I think someone needs to be put on mute.
Any questions?
And so, yeah.
I'll stay on the call if you have questions. I want to make sure that you get your answers.
It's 2:02. You guys are welcome to leave. This will all be a part of the recording as well if you need to go. So just be aware of that. We're here to answer questions. I'm going to go over the scoring really briefly. Kelly and I talked about this before the meeting. We're like, I think we probably need an additional kind of explanation of what this is all about. If you guys do happen to look at the scoring sheet, this is going to be a part of the process for the application. We really want you to look. We put the DCA priorities up there. Just that's kind of the lens we're going to be looking through. And we're basically going to do a very basic scoring piece as far as there's no volume on the video. Okay, thanks, Amanda, for letting me know. And so for the point definition, okay, so for the point definition, basically what we're kind of doing is a very basic point situation. So it's either not there, it's there, or someone excelled at it. Like you guys just kicked ass. Sorry, kicked butt. However, I put on YouTube that it's not for kids, so I guess I could technically say that word. So anyway, so we'll go through this specifically with y'all, so then that way you understand it a little bit better. If you guys have any questions, like I said, when you're going through those pieces before the next training and you're like, oh, okay, what does this all mean? Write it down, ask the question. That would be awesome. We'd love to answer it. So, so we've talked about all different kinds of data. All of this is going to be uploaded to the website probably by tomorrow. I've been kind of on it a little bit better this week, so most of this will be able to be up there. Are there any questions that you guys have? And let me say one more thing before you guys start asking all your questions. We are no longer doing one-on-one meetings with the team for non-congregate shelter. We have to be in a quiet period. We wanted to make sure that if there's any information that is exchanged, that it is open to everyone who's applying, that it's not individually based. And so if you have specific questions that you want to ask, this would be the forum to do it in. We would probably have to, again, do more of a generalized answer. And so just know that it's going to be recorded. It's going to be open to public consumption. It's going to be a part of all of that. And so just be aware. But if you do want to meet with the team around rental housing, those meetings are completely open and available. So please sign up on the booking site for that. Okay. So we don't see any hands raised. We have a question coming in. Someone is typing. So Kelly, Jody, is there anything else that needs to be mentioned for us while we're getting additional questions put into the chat and or hands raised?
Now, if you have technical questions about things, then please make sure that you go ahead and put them in through the form, and we'll do instructions or instructional videos on how to do things like create PDFs and upload zip files and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, that's easy. That's really, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's easy stuff. And let me show you guys where that form is. So if you go on the shelter page or for the application page, submitting a question right here, and that'll get you to the form. And this is actually going to officially close on September 1st. So you have many, many months, but this is all of your individual information, and then you can go ahead and ask your question there.
But to answer Evan's other part of his question, yeah, you can ask whatever you need to ask during these events, especially here at the end. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to hang on. If you've got things that you want to discuss, you know, we're going to record it and it'll be available to everybody, but it has value to everybody. So please, you know, if you want to open up unmute yourself and ask, or, you know, show your video so that we can see your pretty faces, that would be great. And we'll answer whatever we can.
Yeah. So we have
All
a
right,
few
Kelly.
more.
Well, I'm going to take on that challenge, Kelly. I'm going to do it.
Yay!
I'm actually, it's clear. I'm up here at a conference in Chattanooga.
Cool.
And I'm in
Wow.
some kind of hotel lobby, but there's no one around, so it's okay. I had, well, specifically, I think I had some procurement questions because, well, frankly, Kelly, you scared the mess out of me during the procurement training. I'm
I
like, oh
didn't
my
mean
gosh.
to.
Well, no. It's just one of those, I don't know what she means, you know, by a bunch
Fair
of
enough.
stuff. But I think what I want to do instead is submit, I want to articulate the question and submit it through the thing. That way I'm clear on everything. But, you know, as you guys know, we're leveraging some other dollars, some local funds into this, you know, kind of larger project that we're hoping to fill out with this. And, you know, we sort of started down that road with these other local funds. And so I think what we're trying to figure out is how can we mesh our existing activities with projected activities that we hope to do with the home funds down the road, and what that might look like. And I think we're probably going to do this maybe in a phased project. That seems to be the simplest way.
Okay.
Because it feels like if we do this and we start with the local funds, because we're already working with a contractor, we've got an architect already doing that stuff. Well, I guess I'm dipping into the question. Let me just ask this one little question right here. We've contracted with an architect that's already done the building design, and, you know, we've got all of the things that they are already doing. It's gone through the commission and everything.
Sure.
If we don't pay for any architectural fees or anything with home funds, can we continue to use that same architect when designing things that are going to be built with home funds? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. So it is my understanding that as long as you're not asking for reimbursement from the HOME-ARP program, that you can do whatever process you normally do. The big thing is that if you have a procurement policy, and you should all have a procurement policy.
We do, yeah.
You need to follow your procurement policy.
Mm.
Now, does that policy mean that you have to follow 2 CFR 200? Not necessarily, until you start trying to get reimbursed for specific items. And those items need to be procured under 2 CFR 200. However, send me the question. Let me run it through legal so that we're all on the same page.
Exactly.
And get you an answer, because you're not the only agency that is looking at layering funding for projects that have been trying to get, you know, the entire package together to fund. And I want to make sure that we have a very strong answer. If we need to go to HUD for it, we'll go to HUD for it.
Yeah. Because technically that goes along with the grant writers as well. It's the same type of concept. Mm-hmm.
Architects, developers, the whole bit.
Well, I think, as far as the grant, I'm going to be the grant writer on this, but I'm not going to get paid through this. So I think we're okay there. And, honestly, I know there's got to be a way. I just want to make sure we do it right, because I can't imagine, there's, with what we're doing, there's not enough funding from one single source out there to do all of this, with
There's
the
not.
costs of everything. So we've got to layer, we've got to sort of,
Yeah.
leverage additional resources. So there's got to be a way to do it. I just want to make sure that we're doing it right. So
I do too. And mixed finance is always
Sticky.
complicated.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
shoot us through the form and let me then forward it on so that we have everybody and their brother take a look at it, and we will get you a formal response.
Okay. Good stuff. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely.
I'm signing off now.
Okay. Have a
And
good time at the
Angela-
conference.
Hutchins
Yes.
had a question. Housing young women 18 to 25 that have aged out of foster care or homeless, bravo. But we have not started housing.
So the shelter would be it would be the newest foray for them
Oh,
into
okay.
this
All
particular
right,
area.
I get what you're saying. Okay,
Mhm.
so that's okay. You need to talk about the collective experience. So you, board members, staff, anybody who has housing experience. If you don't have someone who has housing experience and you're getting ready to start a shelter and this is going to be a new operation, you need to bring on somebody who has some housing experience in your community. It's not, you don't have to get real broad or complicated with that. Just somebody who understands Georgia landlord tenant law would be a good example. Or another agency that maybe has sheltering in their portfolio. It doesn't necessarily have to be in your town. So like Salvation Army. Sometimes you have a Salvation Army connection in your community, but they don't do sheltering, but maybe they do sheltering in the urban center. And so having that resource, you can put that in your grant, but build a case on why you have the experience and how you got to this point.
Yeah.
And personal experience has value. I'm disabled. I come from a disabled family. We can have disability conversations because I'm 50 years old and I've been disabled my entire life. So I can talk about being disabled. Just because it's personal doesn't mean that it doesn't have applicable value here. And you being a mom, or you having fostered teens, that's huge. I have a tremendous respect for that. Just tell the story.
Yeah.
What a great application. That's awesome.
Well, and using that qualitative information. And so really telling those specific stories around that. Angela, did you have anything else to add? Because I know you're popping in and out. Okay.
We're going to get to a different segment of the application where we talk about the experience of people on your team. And we actually put that in there specifically because we have a tremendous amount of respect for people who have boots on the ground experience, and want to see what that is. And this grant is a once in a generation kind of grant because it allows us to leverage that at the community level. That's what community driven design is to me, is people who are doing the work on the ground, who have seen a need and are applying for this grant to fill the need, not just because there's money available. Anybody else? Any other questions? Going once.
Going twice.
Twice.
I like how Jack in our listening sessions counts back from, counts up to 30. And it's like, okay, we're done now.
That's a really, I'm not afraid of pausing. Amanda Gillian, I'm so glad that you are getting a lot out of this. I know for some people it might be, it's different and it might be repetitive if you're a grant writer who has a tremendous amount of experience. But when we're talking about capacity building throughout the state, it's incredibly important to me. I remember writing my first grant and I didn't know what I was doing. And there was really nothing to help me figure out how to do it. or how to do it well, except learning from other people. So that's what we're here for.
Absolutely. It's our heart in putting this together. Okay.
All right.
Well,
We appreciate y'all. We appreciate y'all
much.
so much.
And reach out to us via the forum. If you just know that all of this, if you ask us a question, it will be posted to the website. So, so just know that that's going to be a part of it too. And yeah, if you guys have any further questions for us, let us know. And so, do we have?
And
is
there
there
are no
anything
dumb
else?
questions.
No,
There are no dumb questions.
No.
If it comes in and it's stream of consciousness kind of question, we'll clean it up. So you don't have to worry about that. Just get the point across.
Right.
Because there are no dumb questions.
Yep. I agree.
All right.
Okay,
cool. I
then.
wish you all the best over the 4th. Be safe.
Yes. Have
Enjoy
a good time next week.
Independence Day.
Enjoy your families and friends, and we'll see you guys back. I think it's the 13th is the next one. So Thursday, 2 weeks. Yep. Okay, guys. Thanks.
Thank
and
you
we will we'll let you know our contact information in the chat. So
Absolutely.
okay, cool beans. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.